Okay. All right, sounds good. Yep.
There we go. I forgot to unmute my mic. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. We got some people in. Hello, everybody. This is Garrett. Welcome to Console Gaming Radio. This is the late night show that we talk about video games, video game consoles, video game platforms. I'm here with Stadia Talk. Introduce yourself.
What's going on, everybody? How are you doing tonight, Garrett?
I'm good.
Tell me where you what you want me to focus in on, my friend, and we'll talk about it. Whether it's Stadia or you want me to talk about myself. I know we talked a little bit before we got on the air that you
Right.
you kind of want to know a little bit about kind of my background. So
Yeah. So what kind of games did you get into before you got into cloud gaming?
well, I mean the initial route, I guess, as a younger kid, my dad had an Atari 2600, and got into games like Pitfall and Frogger and all that fun stuff. Growing up, Super Nintendo with Yoshi's Island, Dreamcast with Power Stone 2. And then as I got older, the games that really kind of took my imagination further was the SOCOM series on PlayStation. And that was really my first foray into kind of like competitive gaming, as
Right.
far as third-person shooters. And then after that, the game that kind of put me and a couple of my really close friends that I'm still friends with today was Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So that kind of moved me into the place that I'm at now. And then towards the advent of cloud gaming, and I guess I'll stop there, but that's kind of been the progression up to now.
Right. So would you say you were more of like a multiple console guy, or did you kind of stick to one platform during that time?
Um, as a kid, I played everything. So I played the Game Gear, Game Boy, like I said, Dreamcast, Super Nintendo, N64. Pretty much anything that I could get my hands on, I played. Um, I was really the Dreamcast was kind of the catalyst to move into. One of my close friends had an Xbox, and I've talked about this before. Halo and Call of Duty, I think, are the two games that really changed everything for the
Right.
mass market, the consumer market, general consumer.
Yeah,
And
because
that was kind
I
of
was in that live stream, so that kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
yeah.
So after the seventh generation, leading to the eighth generation, did you kind of partake to did you get into the eighth generation at all of consoles?
So if you're referring to like where we're at now,
Yeah.
currently I own a PlayStation 4. So I've been a Sony adopter since the original PlayStation. I did have a Xbox 360, five of them to be exact, all Red Ring of Death. And it kind of turned me away. That was kind of what I always did growing up. Is it was PlayStation and Xbox was kind of the MO, and the consumer side of the house with Microsoft, with kind of the lack of customer support with the 360 situation, kind of turned me away from them.
Right.
And I was kind of more on board with Sony. So I'd say earlier in my life, multiple consoles and multiple handheld devices. As I got older, down to two, and then basically down to one.
Okay. Yeah. See, with me, Xbox 360, my first one red ringed, and then I got that back. Then I modded that one, got that one banned from Xbox Live. So, so I had one banned one unbanned one. So I used to just play all my party games on the banned one, and play my games online on the unbanned one. I'm not ashamed to pirate, like especially back in the day, I didn't care. So I'm not gonna be like that white knight of against piracy. Then as far as PlayStation goes, I was actually pretty clean on that one. Bought all my games until the 8th generation came out. Then I went really into modding the old systems because I'm not going to plan on playing those online anymore. As far as the current gen, for me was I got the PlayStation first, kind of got the Xbox, led towards more the PlayStation. What about, and you led towards the PlayStation on the 8th generation. What are some of your favorite games on the PlayStation 4?
Well, I mean, Sony as a whole, I mean, I'm trying to think back to some of the games I played originally. One that comes to mind is Crash Bandicoot, which was, I don't know why that one sticks with me, but probably beyond that is the God of War series. I was really big into that, and SOCOM, of course. I mean, that was probably the game that I played the most. I mean, I was constantly on that game. So I would say probably a tie between the God of War series and probably SOCOM.
Oh, okay. Did you play the latest one?
When you say SOCOM, yes. Yeah, it
I'm,
was.
I'm talking. My bad. I'm talking about God of War, 2019
um,
one.
no, I hadn't had a chance to play that one. And that's the struggle is, as I've gotten older,
Right.
it's tougher to play. There's less time to play. There's not as much free time, especially, in my case, I'm married. I have a wife.
Mm-hmm.
Work an 8 to 5. It's not easy. You have to try to find time. So
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I think back in, was it April? Stadia was announced around that time. What was your initial reaction to that?
yeah, so chronologically, it actually happened a little bit just before March or before April. I'm sorry, it was actually in March at
Oh,
GDC.
okay.
That we got our first initial announcement on it. And I've always been a Google kind of adopter, if you will. So, Google's always fascinated me. Technology fascinates me. Business strategy fascinates me. I love seeing the chess pieces when companies you can see they're playing logistical chess, towards a long game.
Right.
And for me, I think Stadia, the promise of it is it's opening up and it's tough because I know we think about it and what its current state is right now, but the promise of Stadia is advancing gaming beyond the confines of a box and the confines of a console, giving you the ability to play across multiple devices, convenience. And then, we find out later the cost piece of it, with a free tier. So there's a lot of benefits in that respect that caught my eye. And I think the biggest one initially to me was not being tied to a box, not being tied to a television if you don't have to be,
Right.
and the convenience of it. And, we see that with the Switch. That's one of the reasons why the Switch is so popular.
Right. So would you be as excited if it was like, I don't know, Company X Stadia first instead of Google?
Yeah, I still would be. And I think, because I want to be real careful here that,
Right.
and I know that my channel's name is Stadia Talk. So
Right.
the intent behind this new wave that we're getting ready to go into is it's a broad market, and there is going to be lead changes. And I think it'd be naive to say that there wouldn't be. And I've actually talked about this on my channel that Stadia at its current state is still probably the front runner as it stands right now. But going into this year, it's going to be a war. You're
Yeah.
going to have the likes of Microsoft, Amazon's going to come in. So Yeah. But no, but to answer your question, I think I would still be interested because of the promise of what it could deliver if it wasn't Google.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as there, because like I didn't care so much about the company behind it. Like I have a little bit more faith behind it because of Google, because all their data centers and they have a bunch of money to back it up. So, but I do kind of like the new tech, and even though like I'm a game collector, I love having my boxes. I also love the advancement of video games because if cloud gaming could make video games run or look so much better than what we have now, why not? And and I know there's already going to be a war because it's already started with GeForce Now, but we'll get into that later. So, did you pre-order it like day one when it came out, like when it was first announced?
When they did the official announcement in June, yes. And again, because we knew more information about what the expectations were behind it. And I think what caught my eye is, and this is really what's going to change the market for a lot of people. And I don't think that this should be ignored. And I
Right.
know we'll get into GeForce Now in a few because there's going to be a very stark difference here between the two. But the promise of offering the ability to say to someone, all you have to do is buy your game. And
Right.
that's literally it. You don't have to buy a console. You don't have to have a subscription with Xbox Live Gold or PlayStation Plus to get onto this thing. You buy
Mm-hmm.
your game and you're in. That was the promise that intrigued me. Then the piece of it with Pro, everyone's kind of had different opinions about the Pro subscription. I've actually enjoyed it, and it's been something that surprised me. Just very quickly, the one thing that I think was really a surprise is the 720p HDR on Stadia, which is with Pro. That's you get the high dynamic range.
Right.
It looks as good as 1080p HDR, and I know that's gonna. Some people are gonna say you're lying. Here's my response to that. Anyone that's sitting back 10 feet, 11 feet from a television, you're not counting pixels when you're playing a game.
No.
And really what you're looking at is the picture as good as far as the resolution? Is it not blurry? Is it not pixelated? And that's what I'm trying to say. When you look at the two against each other, you can't tell the difference unless you're right up against the television screen. And it's saving me data. I have a data cap, and
Right.
it only uses 4.5 gigs an hour. So again, there's a lot of things that we don't talk about with Stadia that are benefits, and that's one right there with not using as much data or as much data consumption and getting a high quality picture. Um, so I've enjoyed it. I really have.
Now, speaking upon that, you can easily tell the difference between HDR if it's on and
Hmm.
off, or ray
Hmm.
tracing if it's on and off. Because
Correct.
the picture that sent on the Discord, that had ray tracing on, and if I didn't tell you guys, would you guys have noticed it? Because because that was after I purchased the Founders Edition on GeForce Now.
Okay, gotcha. So you're talking about a recent game stream that you did?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Because I did post a picture on your Discord with the ray tracing technology.
gotcha. So what I'll do, because and I apologize to you in advance right now, the is with
Right.
work schedules and stuff. Sometimes I don't always get to see everything, but I'll take a look at that because that's something that this is the thing for me with how do I say this the right way? And I don't want to jump too far ahead towards the GeForce Now point, but there's going to be some areas I think for every person that is either going to make them excited about Stadia when it comes from a general consumer standpoint versus someone that's already in, let's just say, an ecosystem like Steam or Valve or PC Gamer. And if you're one of those individuals, you're probably going to be more inclined to be interested in local hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. People that are still in that mindset, there's nothing wrong with that. If you prefer local hardware, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But
Exactly.
I think one thing that I've been very specific on is that in a couple of years, that isn't going to be what people care about. They're just going to care that they have a picture on their screen, and where it comes from doesn't matter. Whether it's a fried chicken nugget, I've used this analogy,
Right.
or it's a baked chicken nugget, it's still a chicken nugget at the end of the day.
Right.
And as long as it performs up to or it's better, that's what people are going to care about.
Yeah, and right now people are just finding everything that they can to compare each other, and that's going to be like that for a couple years, but with Stadia, with the next 5 years, everything's going to come out day and date with everything. Like Game X is going to come out with Stadia, PS6, or whatever the next Xbox is, and GeForce Now, because you're going to buy those games on Steam, and GeForce Now is going to support it, and it's going to be to the point where it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same game. And as far as the marketing with Stadia right now, just people are just kind of confused. They wanted Netflix of gaming. They didn't get that, so they're generally mad about Stadia about that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. And actually, I just wanted to tell you this, Garrett. I pulled up your picture in real time because I wanted to look at it.
Right.
And quite honestly, if you hadn't told me that it had ray tracing on it, I think you were trying to make the point that would you know that it did or would you know that it didn't?
Right.
Initially, I'm not someone that picks out pixels. I'm not someone that looks at, is it got this over this? At the end of the day, I'm more of a 1080p player. If it has 1080p, that's where I'm kind of like, I'm good. It doesn't have to be 4K. It doesn't have to have RTX, with the ray tracing. It's not something that is like an absolute necessity to me. But to go back to your point, that there's been a lot of folks that have, and I'm trying to say this the right way to kind of the listeners and also to within the conversation. There was never ever going to be a Netflix style subscription on any platform. And I want to define what I mean by that, because someone may take what I'm saying and twist that or take that out of context. What I'm referring to is when people say that term, they don't mean a subscription. They mean every brand new game at a $10 price point. And if you look at social media and you look at Reddit, you look at the other places, that's what people mean by that. And that is not going to happen. Developers are not going to allow a subscription model that they do not control to allow every free game, or every brand new game. I'm sorry. The only reason you see newer games on the Game Pass with Microsoft as an example is because those are Microsoft Studio games. They control those games. They control that revenue. Exactly. So it's no loss to them to do that. So I don't, and I've been very adamant about this from the point that I started content on YouTube up through now. That is something I push back on heavily, because business-wise, that is not going to happen in the next 5 years. Could it happen in the future? Are we moving towards potentially that type of a premise? Maybe, especially if cloud gaming takes hold, which it certainly looks like that's going to be where the marketplace is headed. But right now, there's no way that's going to happen. And I think people that are pushing that narrative, they know it's disingenuous. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to call people out and name names, but it's not fair to give an unrealistic expectation to consumers that is not going to happen. And that really bothers me. I hate when people push purchasing preferences and agendas. You can tell that there's something behind it, and there's not facts or truth or things behind it from a business sense of the conversation and a business lens. So sorry I went on a rant there, but I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there, because I think that's really important when you talk about that subject of Netflix of games.
Right.
We got to really talk about what people mean by that, because it isn't just a subscription. They want every brand new game for $10, and that's not happening.
No, if you do want that, you better go join Game Pass, and you better like Microsoft games. That's what I get at it. That's what I get at it. So
well, and even then, you're not getting every brand new AAA game. You're getting Microsoft Studio games, but not every brand new game. So, and Game Pass is amazing. I think it's a great concept. I think it's a great service. There's nothing wrong with it. I just want people to be honest and realistic about things. And if we're going to hold Stadia to a certain, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Garrett, but if we're going to hold Stadia to a certain measure or a certain standard, it's got to be held just like every other console's held to.
Right.
And that hasn't been happening as of late, and it's a bit concerning, especially even from the media.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the new kid on the block, so they're just holding it under a different microscope than other platforms.
Mm-hmm. I agree,
now,
absolutely.
My main concern with Stadia, I just want games to come out day and date with the other games. I understand that they have to develop the games actually on Stadia, but when games actually start coming out day and date with other platforms, for me, I think that's when Stadia is really going to take off. How do you feel about that?
It is an issue that they're going to have to solve. And I know one thing that's already been talked about in our community is, and you've probably seen this too, that folks are frustrated that we've seen when there were recent game releases that games were coming out at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That isn't going to fly with most folks because there's going to be a retort to that. And I talked about this in a recent video that, the retort's going to be, okay, that's great that the game loads up in seconds, but how come I can't play it at midnight? Exactly. I could have downloaded the game by the time that it was available at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, and it's a valid, you're not going to see me try to put smoke and mirrors up. It's a valid argument. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone presenting that. And that is something that Stadia is going to have to think about because they are going to be in a competitive space. And, the elephant in the room right now for everybody, and this isn't just for Stadia, this is for Microsoft. And you saw this in that recent article that Phil Spencer did the interview. You saw him talk about who he thinks the competition is.
Right.
Amazon is the shark in the water that has not reared its ugly head yet. And when they do, because they are masters at this, they come into markets just like Google does, and they disrupt effectively.
Right.
And I think everyone has to be concerned about how quiet they've been because they will come in and they potentially could shock some folks, especially because look at their delivery system. Look, imagine if they did what Stadia is doing with the Amazon Fire Stick, using Twitch. I mean, they have a lot of tools at their disposal to make themselves competitive at this point.
Right. Yeah, because I think around 10 years ago, even Steam used to make their games available at 10 a.m. the next day. Like, let's just say Game X came out on Tuesday. Most places, places will sell at midnight. Steam would upload it at 10 a.m. Even today, certain games are not available until 10 a.m. So Stadia is not the only one that's doing it.
That's a fair shout. But I think people are going to hold Stadia to a standard that they are a console or that they are a platform. And therefore, I should be able to get my game at a certain time. So I think when you said day and date, I agree with you on that point because what you're talking about is release dates.
Exactly.
And
as
that
far
is
time, it doesn't really matter because I'm not available at 9 o'clock anyway. So
right. I got you. I think it plays into it a little bit, though, because there are people that are talking about it. And if it's a topic of conversation, it is something that I think they've got to listen to. But I absolutely agree with you that moving forward in the bigger picture, longer term picture, they do have to get to a point where their games, meaning Stadia's version of the game, launches along with every other platform to be competitive. So I absolutely agree with you on that.
Yeah, because that is a big concern. Now, I know you're a 1080p guy, but there are people out there that really like the 4K and 4K 60 frames per second. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm one of those people. If I could play a game in 4K, then I'm going to. And that's what really interests me in Stadia, when you can stream a game in 4K within seconds. So how long do you think it's going to take for them to really dial that in? Because I know it's up to the developers and publishers on that part.
Well, and it's bigger than that, though. So part of, I think, the reason why they have been hesitant to force or push that, and we know that the web version of 4K is coming, which was a big, when the system launched or the platform launched, that was something that a lot of people were frustrated about. That, okay, well, 4K is locked to the Chromecast Ultra, but we don't have it on the web. We know that's coming. They've made that very clear that that's going to be coming in very short order. And I guess for me, it is a piece that is compelling. And I recognize that there is a demographic out there that wants the 4K piece. I think the challenge, though, to get to my point, is that it comes down to that compression and the data usage.
Right.
And that is still something that's going to loom over Stadia until we start to see the advancements of 5G. Because 5G is going to force competition with all the current physical broadband providers that are in the United States to effectively either completely remove data caps to be competitive, which I've said this before, that's probably how that will happen, because 5G is going to offer unlimited data. They're going to have to, because of the way that those networks are set up. Or they're going to raise their data caps to such a level that you would never touch it. They'll have a cap, but you wouldn't touch it based off of monthly use. So I think that has been a lot to do with it. I also think consistency of the frames, I think of performance has probably been a lot to do with it as well. So they're a little bit concerned on that front. So it is something that needs to come. And Stadia does need to market to all demographics. And I want to say something really quick here too on this point. Okay. And again, this is not directed at you, and I don't think that you've said this, but there is this underlying conversation that has continued to happen in the gaming space not everyone falls into this. So when I say this again, not to twist my words or take it out of context, the gaming demographic of what I would consider a hardcore gamer, there has been this underlying current of our purchasing preferences, and this goes back to an earlier point I was talking about, matter more than all the other demographics that exist out there. I buy more games, therefore my opinion should matter more. And I have to, again, push back on that when I hear that from folks, because from a business perspective, if Stadia only focuses on one purchasing block, they will fail. That is a guarantee. Hands down, no questions asked. They will run into serious and major problems. And we've seen that with other companies. Xbox ran into this problem with focusing on the wrong demos and not marketing it effectively to all demographics. PlayStation ran into this. Sony did as well in the past. So I really hope that moving forward, Stadia will focus in on this conversation point of, hey, this purchasing block wants 4K. Right. Give them 4K. The purchasing block of the hyper-casual gamer, they just want convenience. They just want to be able to get into a game easily. Focus on that. Focus on base, which is going to bring in that casual market. And for the mid-core gamer, which is really what my demographic is, I only play about 20 or 25 hours a week, if I'm lucky.
Right.
Focus on what it kind of brings that gaming block in. And really, I kind of have been watching this closely again over the past months and kind of seeing what's the trends on social media, what are people talking about, and it kind of comes back to that. It comes back to convenience and cost, but it's also it's games. That group does want to play not all the games, but they want to play a variety of games. They want to have different options, different genres. So they're going to have to deliver on that promise. And I do think by the end of this year, they're going to have to come up with a subscription model for a library of games like Game Pass to be compelling to that hardcore gaming demographic. So they've got a lot of room to grow here. They're not by any means done or finished. But 4K, I respect that, Garrett. I don't want to take that away from you. If you love to play in 4K, you should have every right to do that. It's not my cup of tea, but who am I to tell you how to game? And that's what my frustration is when I see people talk like that. So
yeah. And at the end of the day, Google is like the only one that is going. I feel that's going to cater to that audience, to the most of the people's audience. Like they have a section for everybody. With other with other platforms, you get only 1080p, 720p sometimes, and you're just going to have to deal with that. Like with GeForce Now, I kind of want to get into that now. GeForce Now, no matter what service you use with them, either the free or paid, you're only getting 1080p. And what people are saying now is the picture doesn't look as good as Google Stadia, which is, I do agree with that statement, but they still run almost the same in my eyes.
Here's my honest opinion, and I can't speak for you, but I'm
Right.
just going to speak from what my lens is. This whole thing of K's and P's and everything else, Stadia needs to stay away from that. At this point, until they are at a place where they can truly boast that, if that's what their end goal is, they're playing with fire, and they're opening themselves up to ridicule. They're opening themselves up to feedback from the gaming community. And I don't think they truly realized at GDC when they made all those, claims about teraflops and 4K and 60 and everything else, which, I mean, again, 1080 60 should be the minimum standard for everything. I think that's a pretty good benchmark for all types of games. But I think it's just it's a real bad argument for them to get in the middle of. And I think, again, it comes back to, can you load a game up? Can you get into it? Is it convenient? Is it faster than what my PlayStation? I mean, like right now, I tried to jump on the PlayStation earlier tonight, and I'll tell you this story. You know how long it took me to get into a game? 20 freaking minutes, because of there was a patch, there was a download for the game, there was an update, and then by the time I got into there, my wife was like, "Hey, it's time for dinner." So I got 5 minutes of gaming. Now, had I gone into Stadia tonight, I probably would have gotten that full 25 minutes because you can get into a game in under 2 minutes. So that's what Stadia needs to focus in on for me. Don't get into this foolishness about the picture quality and everything else. You can effectively say to everybody, we offer high dynamic range and we offer 60 frames per second, high quality images. That's what you should say. Don't get into all the other stuff, because once you do that, then you're going to have Digital Foundry, who I don't necessarily completely agree with how they characterize the situation, but that's beside the point. For me, the way that I look at it is whether a picture is true 4K or if it's upscaled, if it looks as good or better, it's 4K. Whether it was done through an upscaling format with AI or it was done through local hardware. And that goes back to my earlier point. When we get 5 years from now, people aren't going to care if it's computational algorithms giving you the frames or if it's the local hardware. All they care about is, does it run? Does it play well? And is it fun? And if it fits those pieces, they're not going to care where it comes from. And that's for the casual market. Now, for the hardcore market, we'll have to see how that transitions in the next few years. I do think there's going to be a shift there. And I think when people start to see that, hey, I don't have to go spend, $500 on a graphics card and I let the company do it for me, that's going to potentially change some people's minds when it comes to a cost analysis. But I digress.
Yeah, because right now I'm in the same boat. Like, my computer is kind of out of date. And if I did want to get like the best out of it, I would have to spend like 500 to 1,000 on a new card. And as far as the load times on Stadia, from comparison to GeForce now, it does load a lot faster. It does get into game a lot faster. And the fact is that you actually have to go in through your Steam account to load it up. That takes a long time. That takes a good minute just to even have it launched. And you still have to go in and dabble into all the graphic settings, because most games will actually will give you the default graphic settings, and doesn't matter, you have to load it all up, because it is at the end of the day a PC game, which is, I kind of wanted that through Stadia, but after experiencing it with GeForce Now, I'm kind of glad that they're doing their own hardware.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me with GeForce Now is, again, if you're somebody that's already in the Steam or Valve ecosystem, or you're a PC gamer, the amount of clicks that you have to do to get into a game, I don't think it bothers you. I really don't. I don't think it's a killer. But I will tell you again, if we're looking at this from Stadia base versus GeForce Now free, because that's going to be the comparison. It isn't going to be the Pro versus the other. When the Stadia base launches, that's going to be the benchmark. That's what everyone's going to aspire to try to get towards, because it's an effective business plan. So if you can get into a game, and when I say get into a game, purchase and click and you're in instantly, versus, okay, I got a GeForce Now account, now I got to set up a Valve account, now I got to buy the game through Valve, now I got to go back to GeForce Now I got to launch the game through Steam, now I've got to hope that game's compatible, because not all the games are compatible on GeForce Now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I ran into the other day.
Yeah, so people aren't going to put up with that. And I'm not saying everybody. There are people that are willing to go that route. But I'm looking at that the broader market, because it's a bigger pie when you look at who is going to potentially come into this thing. So for me, I think Stadia at this point still, and I know it's early days, I still think that they are a slight front runner ahead of GeForce Now. And even, again, the free version of GeForce Now, you get limited to an hour, and then you're kicked off and you got to go wait in a queue.
Exactly.
We haven't heard that Base is going to go that route. In fact, that's not something that they have talked about. The indication is that the hope, at least from what we understand, is that the server blades, they've ramped up enough that they should be able to support, most of the major cities where they don't run into that problem. Now, if something changes and we hear that there is going to be some type of a waiting system, even with Stadia, that's going to be an issue. And that's something Stadia is going to have to address, because again, I don't think sessions or queues or any of this other, whatever you want to name it or put a brand on it of, I don't think people are going to go for that. And especially in the culture and the generation that we're in right now, of people want things in the now. They want it now. They want it instantly. They do not want to wait. So again, that comes back to that business model of why does it look a little bit better for Stadia right now versus GeForce Now, and why I don't think it was genuine for the media to say that this was a what was the word that they use? Demolish. Completely disingenuous. And then after you see Phil Spencer's comments, all of a sudden we start seeing a bunch of these media outlets doing moonwalking, because it is a reality, and I'll get off of this, but God love Phil Spencer. I love the man to death. I really do. And people might be surprised by this. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a genuine guy. When he says something, he means it. It wasn't but just a month ago he said cloud gaming was 10 years away. He's dead wrong. He's absolutely wrong on this. And it's clear that either one, internally they realize that infrastructure-wise they're not ready, and they see that Amazon and Google is about to jump into a major leap on this, or two, and this is one that's very possible, they may already see internally with projections that the Series X is not going to hit their Q1 projections for a business perspective. And they may be saying, oh snap, we're still going to produce the Series X, but we better make a quick shift because we may be hemorrhaging money.
Right.
And any smart business, when they look at something from that landscape, they're going to immediately start putting in plan Bs and plan Cs. And for me, the comments that we heard from Phil Spencer, it's an acknowledgement. Whether it was intentional or not intentional, he realizes that, oh snap, Google is about to do something that we didn't expect. And it's funny that he brings up Amazon, but that I've been saying it from day one. They are the shark in the water. Who knows what they're going to do? And God help everybody, even Google, because they could come in and completely upend everything that we've seen up to this point.
Right. And I feel, Amazon's just sitting back seeing what happens right now. They're working on their stuff, and they're just seeing how it plays out for now, and they're just going to strike. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I'm disagreeing with you, Garrett.
Oh, okay. So, so what game would you want on Stadia, like right now, if you could make it happen? What are some of the games that you want to see on Stadia? Upcoming games? It doesn't matter if they're out already.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, and this is not a game that I would probably play right now, to be honest, but I'm looking at it from, again, a business lens. I think the game that they need on this thing tomorrow, it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm going to be very honest with you. It's not going to happen in the future right now, but they need a game like a Call of Duty. Yeah. They need a game that appeals to the mass market, or a Madden or a FIFA. If they can't get that, the one that I've talked about is Resident Evil 3. We know that that's getting ready to come out, and that appeals to a mass demographic of folks in all of the gaming spheres, the purchasing blocks. So for me, I think it needs to be a game that is appealing to a larger audience. I do think they need to diversify their portfolio with indie games as well. This is a perfect opportunity to put $10, $15, $20 games that are appealing, especially like right now, the Stadia user base that's on this platform right now, they're clamoring for anything and everything they can get their hands on.
Exactly.
Not every game, but some games they want to play stuff. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to do that. And I think here's the one thing I will say, and I'm going to be more of a positive spin on this part. The games will come.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been an issue for me. It's never been an issue of if, it's an issue of when. And they obviously, there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe it's negotiations. Maybe it's, certification of games. Maybe the publisher is choosing to not release something because maybe they have a deal already with another platform where it's got to be timed with how they announce it. Who knows? But for me, the games will come.
Yeah. And, they are going to come. Like I said earlier, it's going to be a day and time where they're just going to, everything's just going to be on every single platform, third party wise. And when that day comes, it's just going to be really good for any platform. So, as far as exclusives go, what's your thoughts on exclusive games being on Stadia and indie games? Because I know you just mentioned more about indie games. Do you think it should be like open You think it should be like open publishing, like anyone could just publish to it, or you think it should just be closed off?
Right now, I don't think that there's an issue if they were willing to open it up to developers. Now, long term, that could be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is developers may push back and say, well, now all the other larger games are crowding us out. Why would we put our game on your platform? And we've seen that happen with other platforms.
Right.
But for me, as far as exclusives matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to give a shout out to somebody, and I try to do it every single time that this conversation comes up. Wingy, Glory of Stadia, has hammered this home from literally day one on his channel. And it really, earlier on in November and December, I was more of the mindset that exclusives matter, but they don't matter for the founders launch, right? Because those people are already on your platform. But he swung me around to the belief that actually they needed to be there from the jump, because they could have brought more people in under the Founders Edition. They could have brought more folks in and put more eyes on this thing. So in that respect, exclusives absolutely matter to this platform. Mm-hmm. And we will see some timed exclusives. We know that we're going to see Spitlings. We know we're going to see Orcs Must Die 3. Baldur's Gate is going to be a platform exclusive, if you will, even though it's going to be on PC. So there's a lot of positives that are coming to Stadia as far as that respect. And we got the update in the past few weeks about we're going to get 10 exclusives in the first half of the year, timed exclusives probably,
right.
And then 120 games total. I can't remember, if they hold true to this number, I can't remember a time where in a console's first year ever, and this isn't something that people are talking about. Again, it's white noise. It's Stadia's going to die. It's dead. It's dying. But if we go back to that talking point, when was there ever a console in its first year that launched 120 games? I can't remember one. I really can't. I kind of tried to rack my brain the other day saying, was there really a console that came out that had that many games in its first year of existence? And I really, again, can't think of one.
Yeah, me neither. Even the eighth generation consoles kind of start out slow. Because that was like my very first console launch, getting the PlayStation 4 day one, and it was slow for the first 2 years, in my eyes.
Yeah, so I think what tends to happen here, and you actually made a good point, and one that I agree with, Garrett, is when Xbox came into the market, you said that Stadia was the punching bag, right? It was the new kid on the block. Mm-hmm. The Microsoft folks out there, and I'm not trying to play fanboy sides here. I'm speaking facts. It's just a reality. They were hated. They were chastised. They were put into a corner, and they were told your console's going to fail. Mm-hmm. It will not work, and it will not matter. Mm-hmm. And what happened? Microsoft is one of the largest players in the gaming space.
Exactly.
So it's real easy in the moment to hate on something because it's what everybody else is doing. But what's really going to matter is what happens in 4 or 5 years. And I use this other example very early on my YouTube channel of Netflix. I can literally remember the time when multiple people in my family and people all over social media said Netflix is not going to work, meaning when they did the subscription model for the streaming. The infrastructure is not there on the internet. The pricing model doesn't make sense. It's a flawed premise. And 1 year later, all these people were begging to get a subscription onto Netflix. So it's real easy to hate on something in the moment until you realize and you get your hands on it and go, oh, maybe it isn't as bad as I thought it was. And a lot of these people that are the loud voices in the internet today are people that have never touched this thing, meaning Stadia. They've never had their hands on with it. They have no idea how it properly works, and yet they have an opinion on it. And it's real easy. Shout out to MM2K that said this. It's real easy to be an armchair quarterback and not come in with a honest approach with integrity and facts about something. And I feel like that is a lot of what we're seeing on the internet right now. And again, that is not by any means directed at anyone specific.
Right.
Not directed at you, Garrett, by any means. But I have to say this because it's concerning to me. And I'm seeing it again. Like the past day and a half, I've literally watched Twitter turn into a cesspool off of some of this stuff. It's just craziness.
Yeah, so that's why I'm not on Twitter.
Well, I don't blame you. That's probably a good idea for you, sir. You probably should stay away from it for a little bit.
Yeah, you see, like, it's like, oh, you want me to tweet it out? I'm like, dang, I don't really have a Twitter. So, yeah, because I know Twitter is always a cesspool. I was actually in the Netflix launch because I used to be part of the DVD service. Then when they announced the streaming service, I jumped on that with my Xbox 360. We tried to do that whole party room thing. Remember all that?
Yes, I do. I was trying to think about it for a second.
It's been a long time ago.
It's been a long time since I've even come near an Xbox console, so you got to bear with me.
Yeah, because I remember when they did all that, and that was actually pretty cool watching them. I don't even remember what we were watching. It was like some anime something, and all of our friends got into like a theater type deal, and then it just grew. Netflix grew. Now there's Hulu. Now there's Disney Plus and everything, and now it's going to be the same thing with cloud gaming. It's just going to be there.
Yeah, and I do want to say this. Anyone that says that consoles will no longer exist, that's not true either.
No, it's
my honest belief is that cloud gaming will be the primary way that most of us play. There will still always be room for consoles. Consoles will still always exist. It just won't be the primary way we play games. And I do think, and a lot of us have said this in our community. I've actually seen some people just recently, I'm surprised, in the console space on YouTube. A couple folks have said this as well, that this is probably going to be the last true console generation. That doesn't, again, to define this, that doesn't mean that means consoles are gone or, hey, Chase, what you're saying is that they're not going to make consoles again. You're lying. No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that consoles will still be produced. They still will be made, but they will not be the primary way that folks choose to play their games because it won't be as convenient. Right. And convenience and cost always went out. And it's interesting. This marketplace is not like any other marketplace. If you look at it, every other marketplace is dictated by cost. Like if you look at Walmart versus Publix, or are you familiar with Aldi? You know, the grocer chain. It's from Germany, or I can't think of where they're from originally. But
I heard of the name, but I don't know. I haven't been there. So.
Well, it's a really cheap grocer chain, but they offer quality food and quality products versus like a Publix, right? So people always vote with their wallets. They'll always go if the quality of the food is the same and it's cheaper, well, they're going to go with the cheaper price. Consoles and gaming in general, we've never seen a shift in the market where a console was $300, $400, $500 cheaper that offered the same games at a lower price. It's never happened. There's been, I wouldn't even, because some people will say, well, the Switch is that. Well, the Switch really isn't the same as the high-end Xbox 360 and a PlayStation, or Xbox One and a PlayStation 4. It's a little bit different. Yes, they're a console. Yes, it's in the gaming space, but I'm talking about the kind of more of the high end there, if you will. Those AAA games, those AAA titles. We've never seen something be so much lower. And that's what this base model is going to do. It is literally going to shake up the market in a way that I don't think people quite truly appreciate yet and maybe even understand. And that's why you're hearing some of these companies, and again, why we heard, I think, Phil Spencer decide to be candid at this point, is it's going to change things drastically, dramatically. It's almost like if you're familiar with the the stink bombs that come in like the little glass thing and you crush it and it smells terrible. It smells like rotten eggs. It's like walking into a room, dropping one of those things and watching everyone scatter. because that's literally what's going to happen. These companies are not going to know what to do. And, sadly, I think Microsoft realizes they've got to change, but Sony ain't changing. And
No.
they're going to be in a really tough spot. They're going to be in a very difficult spot in a couple of years. So this is going to be very interesting to watch, and it's going to be a very interesting 2020. I think the focal point will be on cloud gaming, and I think consoles will be secondary this year.
Yeah. As far as console gaming, I'm still gonna buy them because yeah. So like I said, they do have the certain exclusives, especially on the PlayStation side. Because
Right.
there could be that God of War 2, there could be that Spider-Man 2 that I'd still want to play. But at the end of the day, third party game, Stadia, third party game, you know.
Yeah, and listen, I would at some point, and this is a terrible purchasing decision. So if anyone's listening to this, do not follow. Well, let me rephrase that. You do you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's my mantra. But this would be a terrible purchasing decision in my eyes for myself. If that game came out, I'm almost tempted just to buy a console for that one game, and that's a terrible decision.
I know
It's a terrible decision. It's a terrible, terrible decision. And that's the tough part that I'm in right now, because Stadia has really changed the way that I game. I mean, it really has. I went from maybe playing 7 or 8 hours a week to, on average, I'm playing about 20 hours now. It's doubled my game time because I can play in the room on my Pixel 3a with the PlayStation controller on Bluetooth. If my wife is wanting to watch her favorite show on, the main TV where the Chromecast Ultra is, I'll go over here to the Pixelbook and I'll play on the Pixelbook for a little bit. So I've got more variety of ways that I can play. I'm not tied down to a television. And I think that was always the problem for me, is I'd get into a game, I'd think that I was going to play, there'd be a download, an update, and then all of a sudden, hey, I want to watch this. Oh, well, there goes my game night. So it took away my ability to play games.
See, with me, because everyone's in a different boat. Because my TV's back there, so my current gen is connected to my gaming PC monitor. So someone could watch TV and I could just game on here, but not everyone's fortunate enough to have that kind of setup at their place.
Right.
And yeah, like I almost bought I bought my PlayStation 4 just because of Final Fantasy VII remake, because I'm a big Final Fantasy guy. And that's a Sony exclusive for right now, so that's that's my dumb decision right there.
Gotcha.
And when God of War 2 comes out, and Spider-Man 2, because I just recently platinum Spider-Man for the PS4, I'm going to end up getting a PlayStation 5.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, and I think one thing that I'm actually going to kind of solidify your point about getting console. I think we have to be careful of not demonizing folks for choosing to game the way they want to game.
No.
Cloud gaming isn't going to appeal to everybody, at least in the now. There's going to be people that are hesitant, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's people should choose and have the options to play the way that they want to play. And, that's just a big thing for me. I've never been about trying to say to someone, hey, you need to do this or you need to do this. No, you should come and listen to facts,
Right.
Listen to what people present, and then you have to make an informed purchasing decision as a consumer and see what's right for you. And it may not be right, and for someone else, on the contrary, someone may say a console's not right for me. This is better for me. Yeah, everyone's going to be a little bit different, and that's absolutely okay. We should all game the way that we want to game.
Exactly. They certain consoles exist for a certain for a reason. You like that ecosystem, that's great. You like the Xbox ecosystem, that's great. You like Stadia, good. And I think Colin Moriarty made a very good point when it came to during the whole Xbox and PlayStation war. Like, okay, you want to stick with Xbox, that's fine, up to you. But you're just gonna miss all these great exclusives at the end of the day. And
yeah, and that's someone's decision. If they
exactly.
don't want to do something, then that's fine. And I think it's just, again, we're in that kind of culture right now where people just want to say you're either with us or you're against us. And it's, if you want to game on multiple things, then by all means do what's best for you. Don't don't let someone else tell you what to do at the end of the day, because that usually means that someone has a hidden agenda,
Hmm.
which is not in your best interest.
All right. Yeah. So before we go, what's the game you're most anticipating?
For me, probably Baldur's Gate 3. I'm a huge RPG and MMO guy. I love those games. I'm also a pretty not religious, but I love Diablo. Diablo is one of my top games. Which I didn't even mention that. Goodness gracious, how terrible of me not to mention Diablo. But yeah, Baldur's Gate I think is a big game for me, and I'm really really excited about that, and especially being able to play that on the go. If I'm somewhere that's got Wi-Fi, yeah, that's an instant purchase for me. No questions asked.
Right. So for me, as far as PlayStation goes, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and as far as Stadia, Cyberpunk.
It's a good shout. Cyberpunk's a good game.
Yeah.
I think everyone should be excited about that one.
Yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of Witcher because I got done playing Metal Gear Solid 5, and I love that game religiously, and I just had to take a break from those free roaming Epic games for a while. So, but I'm ready to get into Cyberpunk, and I'm glad it's coming out on Stadia. I'm glad I could play it on any screen, and that's the number one game that I'm looking forward to on that platform right now, unless they announce something that we don't know about. So,
Well, I mean, they could, and
mhm,
I think that's something that we'll have to watch in the coming weeks. We may get a couple of we might get a couple sneaky surprises from them that we're
exactly.
not expecting. So
Yeah, it's about that time of year where we're gonna get all these surprises. So,
agreed.
all right. Well, it was nice talking to you. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you want to check out content from me, you can head on over to youtube.com/Stadia Talk. You can also find me on Twitter, which is twitter.com/Phantom UFC fan.
Okay. You can find this podcast on my YouTube channel, G Million. You can also find it on my podcast hosting site, Podbean, and it's also on Apple Podcast. I'm working on getting it on Spotify and Google Play. So that once I start paying for the service, I should be able to get it on there as well. And I totally spaced out what I was gonna say next.
It's all good. I had a moment earlier with the when you hit me with the "Hey, did you see this?" And I was like, "Oh God, Garrett, you're putting me on the spot, man."
See, that's good. I like to keep you on your toes.
It's all good, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a good day. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Sorry we didn't get to the chat because we're just focused on our conversation. And and I did now remember. So I will be releasing my GeForce Now video this weekend after I get off work. I'm going to be playing some more games and capturing more game footage that I'll give you guys a better answer. So look for that either Saturday or Sunday. And this is totally random. I want to get back into Dance Dance Revolution. I have a whole setup in the living room, and I'm going to be live streaming it again. So look for that as well.
I might have to check that out. I'm not gonna lie. I love watching DDR stuff.
All right, good. Because I have a whole setup with like I have a